Hi everyone. Before we dive in, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future content. Let's get started. On a late November evening in 1998, a quiet house in Washington, D.C. was suddenly shattered by screams and chaos. When police arrived at the scene, they found a man lying dead with multiple gunshot wounds, while two women, a mother and a daughter, stood in front of him, stunned and silent. Neither said a word, leaving many questions unanswered. What had happened in the house? How did a seemingly happy family end in such a bloody tragedy? The initial evidence was fragmentary, and the motive behind the man's death remained a mystery, leaving the truth of the case unclear. Lydia Harper, 45 years old, was a single mother who had devoted her life after a failed marriage to raising her daughter Samantha with all her love and hope. Since she was a child, Samantha had been the center of Lydia's life. Although Lydia's years of marriage were filled with bitterness, she did not let that affect the way she raised her daughter. On the contrary, she loved Samantha even more, turning that love into the motivation to build a warm little family. Their home in Washington, D.C. was a place filled with warmth and affection. Lydia was not only a mother but also a close friend to Samantha. From movie nights together to hours-long conversations and walks around the city, mother and daughter shared everything in life. Their close relationship was built not only on maternal love, but also on Lydia's deep understanding of Samantha. At 22, Samantha was a young woman full of energy and ambition, studying economics at a prestigious university and dreaming of one day finding her true love. Growing up with her mother as a strong, independent woman, she always respected Lydia's opinions. This gave Samantha a deep admiration and a special spiritual connection with her mother. They often discussed love, life, and even their dreams for the future. Lydia, despite having experienced many hardships in her marriage, never showed pessimism or lost faith in love. She always advised Samantha that love was worth waiting for, but she should not be blinded by it. Lydia encouraged her daughter to always maintain her self-respect, to know how to cherish herself, and to only choose to love someone who is truly trustworthy. To Lydia, Samantha was the most important person in her life, and she did not want her daughter to suffer the pain she had experienced. However, Lydia still had an invisible fear in her heart. She worried that her daughter, with her young and passionate heart, might be hurt if she met a bad man. That is why Lydia was always deeply interested in Samantha's love life, although she tried to keep a distance so that her daughter would not feel pressured. On the contrary, Samantha always found great inspiration and comfort in her mother. She understood that her mother had gone through a lot of hardships to build a life for both of them. This made her cherish her close relationship with Lydia even more. Whenever Samantha encountered difficulties in her studies or life, her mother was always the first person she turned to. Lydia, with her wisdom and life experience, always knew how to help her daughter solve any problem with sincere and careful advice. Both of them found peace and security in each other, something they could not find in anyone else. Their close bond made their lives more special. They were not only mother and daughter but also companions, overcoming all difficulties and challenges together. Samantha always felt lucky to have her mother by her side, and Lydia was happy to see her daughter growing up confident and strong. One fateful day in 1998, their lives were disrupted by the appearance of David Lawson. Lydia Harper changed completely when she attended an important social event in Washington, D.C. At this event, Lydia, with her natural beauty and intelligence, quickly attracted the attention of many attendees, but most notably, David Lawson. David, a successful and charismatic man, could not take his eyes off Lydia from the first time they met. A strong connection was formed between the two. David was attracted not only by Lydia's charming appearance but also by her sharp intellect and confident demeanor. The two quickly became close through long conversations about life, career, and the ups and downs of life. Lydia, after years of loneliness and focusing on raising her daughter, felt like she had found herself again when she was with David. He gave her the feeling of being appreciated and loved, something Lydia had longed for. Their relationship progressed quickly. Lydia, despite being somewhat cautious due to past hurts, could not help but feel happy when she was with David. After years of loneliness, she gradually felt the joy of love and romance again. David knew how to make Lydia feel special, and she believed that this could be her chance to start a new chapter in her life. However, life often has surprises. Not long after Lydia and David's relationship began, Lydia's daughter Samantha also happened to meet David at another social event. It was a dinner party with friends that Samantha attended with her student group. David, with his elegant and mysterious demeanor, quickly made a strong impression on Samantha. She had no idea that the attractive man she was chatting with was her mother's new boyfriend. Samantha, like many other young girls, was attracted to David's confidence and success. Not only was he the mature man she had always been looking for, but he also brought a sense of mystery that made Samantha want to know more about him. After a few conversations, a separate relationship began to develop between them, far different from the one David had with Lydia. Samantha, unaware of the truth, began to develop strong feelings for David. For David's part, despite already having a romantic relationship with Lydia, he could not resist Samantha's attraction. Samantha's youth, energy, and enthusiasm made him feel new and exciting. David, instead of stopping this relationship, gradually sank into a complicated emotional vortex. David found himself torn between two women, Lydia and Samantha. He had deep feelings for Lydia and didn't want to give her up, yet he couldn't resist the charm of Samantha. Both women were passionate about their relationships with David, each believing she was the only one in his heart. During the initial months, things went smoothly. Lydia felt happier than ever, believing that after years of loneliness, she had finally found true love. David often took her out for dinner, attended social events, and always made her feel loved and appreciated. At the same time, Samantha was equally captivated by David. With her passionate heart and youthful spirit, she believed that he was the man she had been searching for. Secret dates and intimate conversations left Samantha with no doubt about David's feelings for her. Even though they lived in the same house, neither Lydia nor Samantha knew that they were in love with the same man. Their close mother-daughter relationship remained intact, as they shared aspects of their work and life, but each kept her romantic life private. This delicate balance lasted for months, with David skillfully managing both relationships without either of the women finding out. He always had perfect excuses for not being able to see either of them, and neither Lydia nor Samantha questioned him. Lydia believed that she was the only woman in David's life, the one who gave him peace and stability. Meanwhile, Samantha felt the thrill of a new, passionate love. But secrets are rarely kept forever, and the truth slowly began to surface. One afternoon, Lydia was sitting in the living room and noticed Samantha's phone on the table. Without any bad intentions, she picked it up to remind her daughter about a weekend plan. As she opened the phone, she was shocked to see intimate messages and photos of David and Samantha. Smiles, hugs, and looks she knew all too well. Lydia's heart was crushed. The man she trusted and loved was also involved with her own daughter. Each photo and message was like a puzzle piece, revealing a betrayal she never imagined. Stunned, Lydia chose not to confront David right away. Instead, she decided to stay calm, observe, and gather more evidence. Deep inside, a part of her hoped it was all a misunderstanding, that David wasn't truly cheating on her, and that Samantha wasn't aware of her relationship with him. Day by day, Lydia became more watchful of Samantha's actions, scrutinizing her phone calls, messages, and whereabouts. She even followed her secretly whenever she went out with David, enduring the pain of seeing her daughter happy with the man she also loved. Tension between Lydia and Samantha grew more noticeable. Though they never spoke openly about it, Samantha sensed that something was wrong with her mother. Lydia had become distant and irritable, even in their daily conversations. Despite Samantha's attempts to understand what was troubling her mother, Lydia remained evasive, creating a rift between them. Meanwhile, anger simmered within Lydia. She felt betrayed not only by David but also by her daughter, even though she knew Samantha might be unaware of the truth. Each time she saw Samantha happy around David, her resentment deepened. Yet, she chose to keep silent, waiting for the right moment to reveal everything. David, unaware of the growing tension between the women, continued to maintain both relationships. For him, everything seemed fine. Lydia, with her maturity and wisdom, brought him stability, while Samantha's youthful energy added excitement to his life. But Lydia's quiet investigation continued, and as she uncovered more evidence of David's relationship with Samantha, her hatred grew. It became clear to her that David wasn't just cheating. He was exploiting her daughter's feelings. She knew she couldn't let the situation drag on any longer. On a chilly night in late November 1998, Lydia finally decided it was time to confront the truth. The atmosphere in her house was tense as she called David and Samantha over. They arrived, unaware of the storm that awaited them. David appeared first, as composed and charming as ever, believing he had everything under control. Soon after, Samantha walked in, radiant and full of energy, but to Lydia they both looked like traitors. Lydia began the conversation calmly, but the tension quickly escalated as she revealed what she had discovered. She confronted them both, her voice filled with anger and pain as she spoke about the betrayal she had uncovered. Samantha was initially confused, but as Lydia continued, she realized the horrifying truth. The man she was in love with was also her mother's boyfriend. The confrontation turned into a heated argument, with Lydia unable to contain her anger. She lashed out at David for his betrayal and at Samantha, the daughter she had always cherished. Samantha, feeling equally betrayed, lashed out in return, accusing Lydia of keeping her relationship with David a secret. The emotions of both women erupted in a flurry of accusations, filling the small room with bitterness and sorrow. David, who had been silent through the confrontation, tried to intervene, attempting to calm them down, but his efforts only made things worse. Lydia, overcome by a rage she could no longer control, stormed into the kitchen and grabbed a knife. In that moment, she no longer saw David as the man she had once loved, but as someone who had destroyed everything she held dear. When David moved to stop her, she stabbed him in the chest. As the knife penetrated David's body, he collapsed to the floor, clutching his bleeding wound. Lydia's panicked eyes could not believe her actions, but it was too late. Samantha witnessed the whole scene before her eyes with indescribable horror. She screamed, running towards her mother, trying to stop what was happening. But Lydia, in a state of panic and extreme anger, turned back to Samantha with a look of blame. She no longer saw the daughter she raised, but only the one who robbed her of her happiness. "It's all your fault," Lydia screamed, her voice cracking with anger and grief. "You took David from me, took everything I had." Samantha, shocked and hurt, tried to defend herself but could not form words. She no longer recognized the mother who had loved and cared for her. In that explosive moment, when Lydia advanced on Samantha, still holding the knife, the young girl had no choice but to defend herself. Samantha pushed Lydia away, both of them falling to the floor in a frenzy. Samantha, with the strength of her life, fought back desperately. Her mother, eyes filled with madness, did not stop, continuing to attack her daughter in blind anger. In chaos and utter fear, Samantha grabbed anything that could protect herself. She picked up a heavy object from a nearby table and attacked Lydia, pushing her away. Lydia fell to the floor, blood from the blow making her dizzy. Samantha gasped, her heart pounding in her chest, her hands shaking, her eyes filled with terror. David was still on the floor, unconscious, and Lydia was gasping for air, looking at her daughter with pain and despair. There was no more screaming or arguing, only dead silence in the room. Samantha stood there, watching her mother and the man she loved both lying on the floor in pain and violence. It was all out of control, and she knew there was no turning back. With a glazed look on her face, Samantha called the police, her voice hoarse with panic. "Come here, my mother. We need help." The words echoed in the cold room, broken. Shortly after Samantha called the police, the authorities in Washington, D.C. were quickly present at the scene. Police sirens blared across the quiet neighborhood, and flashing lights reflected in the windows. When the police entered the house, they immediately realized the gravity of the situation. David was lying motionless on the floor, bleeding from a severe chest wound. Although the police searched for signs of life, all efforts were in vain. David died at the scene from the deep stab wound. Meanwhile, Lydia and Samantha were in a state of chaos. Lydia stood against the wall, her eyes glazed over, seemingly unable to comprehend the gravity of what she had just done. She stared at the lifeless body of David, who had been a part of her life just hours before, now lying on the floor. Samantha, on the other hand, sat on the floor, her hands shaking, breathing heavily in a state of panic. She had not yet overcome the shock of seeing her mother attack and kill the man she also loved. Immediately, the police officers arrested Lydia. She did not resist, just silently put her hands up and let herself be handcuffed. When asked about the reason for the crime, Lydia simply said that she could not control her emotions in a fit of jealousy. She did not offer any further excuses, only admitting that she had acted out of complete control. As Lydia was taken away from the scene, she turned to look at Samantha once more but said nothing more. It was a look of collapse, despair, and regret. Samantha, although not directly involved in the murder, was also taken to the police station for questioning. Her mind was completely confused at this time. Memories of the argument, of her mother holding the knife, of David's last look before he collapsed, all came flooding back to her. She didn't know what to say, couldn't understand what had caused the situation to become so horrific. At the police station, Samantha was placed in a small interrogation room, assisted by a psychologist. The officers questioned her about the events of that night. From the moment she arrived at Lydia's house, the confrontation between her mother and David, to the final moments when David was stabbed. The police carefully collected every detail, from Lydia's demeanor before and after the crime to Samantha's reaction when she witnessed the incident. Samantha, her voice hoarse with emotion, recounted the events in a broken voice. She described her mother blaming her for taking David away from her and her helplessness as things spiraled out of control. Samantha admitted that she could not have stopped Lydia from pulling out the knife and attacking David. However, she insisted that she did not participate in the violence and that it all happened too quickly for her to have done anything. Meanwhile, at the scene, police officers continued to collect evidence. The murder knife was found on the kitchen floor, covered in David's blood. Lydia's fingerprints were clearly visible on the handle, and blood stains were scattered across the floor, attesting to the brutal attack. All the evidence pointed to Lydia as the sole person responsible for David's death. Furthermore, Lydia's statement upon arrest, that she had lost control in a fit of jealousy, further corroborated her reasoning. Although Samantha was not charged, officers were still expected to thoroughly question her about her role in the incident. They needed to make sure that she was not directly involved in David's death or that she had not provoked Lydia's attack. Samantha, despite being in a severely traumatized state, answered honestly and frankly. She could not understand why her mother could have acted so cruelly, but she insisted that she had no idea about her mother's relationship with David until everything fell apart that night. The psychologist sat next to Samantha throughout the interview to ensure that she was not too affected by the shock. Samantha spoke about how painful it was to realize that David had been in a relationship with her mother and that she could not have done anything to prevent the tragedy. She also admitted that her relationship with Lydia had been strained in the weeks leading up to the incident but never thought it would end in murder. After completing the evidence collection process and statements from Lydia and Samantha, the police had enough information to make a preliminary conclusion. Lydia Harper, in a fit of uncontrolled anger and jealousy, attacked and killed David Lawson. Evidence from the scene, including the knife, fingerprints, and Lydia's testimony, all pointed to her as the sole person responsible for David's death. Lydia was charged with second-degree murder, a serious crime that could have carried a sentence of decades in prison. Samantha, though not the perpetrator, was deeply traumatized by the event. She was haunted by the experience of witnessing her mother attack the man she loved. The police concluded their preliminary investigation, and Lydia was remanded in custody pending trial. Lydia Harper's trial began in early 1999, and the case became a major public issue because of its complex story of emotion, family, and love. Lydia entered the courtroom looking tired, but her eyes still showed the pain of what had happened. She did not deny her actions, admitting in court that she had stabbed David in a fit of rage. Lydia, however, claimed that her actions were the result of deep hurt and betrayal by both her lover and her daughter, which caused her to lose control. Samantha was also present at the trial. Although she was not directly charged, she faced many questions from the prosecutor about her role, especially why she did not try to stop the incident before it got out of hand. Although Samantha was severely traumatized, she had to explain clearly what happened that fateful night. Lydia was ultimately sentenced to 25 years in prison for second-degree murder. The verdict was the result of a combination of strong evidence and Lydia's testimony. Samantha, despite rigorous testing, was acquitted because she did not directly participate in the violence. The case was closed but left the Harper family with irreparable pain. It was also a costly warning about the devastating consequences that jealousy and betrayal can bring.